I was reading one of the articles that was written about you in Forbes, and they called you idealistic in that you're trying to reform something that is nearly impossible to reform. Do you believe that?
It's let me say this. I don't think it's impossible. It's very difficult. And, America was number one in high school graduation rates not so long ago. We're now number 18th. We see nation after nation starting to surpass us in how they're educating their children. And we've got to do something about it if we're going to have a competitive workforce, if we're going to maintain our standard of living. So in a number of areas, it's difficult without any question. Some people throw up their hands and say it can't be done. We don't believe that. We believe that all children can learn. We believe we can close the gap between different ethnic groups and people of different incomes. It's not easy, though.
You are a believer in public education.
Absolutely. I'm a product of Detroit Public Schools and a land-grant university, Michigan State.
What is it that's going wrong right now? Is there something that you saw at some point along the way and you thought, this is not acceptable, I've got to do something? Was there any one thing?
There was no one. 10 years ago when we started and I left the world of commerce, we traveled the world and for business and other reasons. And I saw what was happening in Japan, China, Korea, India, some European nations. And I shook my head and I said, these kids are getting a far better education than our children are. And we're going to pay a big price if we don't change. And what do we need? We need a longer school day, a longer school year. So they get the same number of academic hours they get in other countries. In other countries, they have a second shift called homework. Here, our kids spend too much time on video games and TV. So they're not getting the same amount of education that other children are getting. And and the next thing we see is we do not see the best and brightest people going into teaching. And that's for a number of reasons. One, it's because they're not paid enough. There's no question about that. But also, the workplace is not very good. If you don't have good governance, good management down to the principal, and in a welcome environment, you're not going to get people that are going to want to go into the profession. So we need better teaching. And that means incentive compensation for teachers. It means differential pay for math and science teachers, differential pay for those going into our very toughest schools. We need that. Then we need national standards. And I'm delighted that finally, after all these years, 48 governors have agreed to national standards. We probably need a national curriculum in math and science. And by the way, our Secretary of Education, Artie Duncan, with the total support of the President, is moving all these things forward. So we're delighted with what's happening at the federal level now in education reform.
So when you have been called idealistic in taking on an impossible task?
I've been called a lot worse than that.
You don't take offense?
I don't think it's an impossible. I think it's difficult. I see what we've accomplished in 10 years, which is quite a bit, but not enough. I am delighted that President Obama and Secretary Duncan are really pushing for what we believe in: charter schools, mayoral control, a longer school day and a longer school year, incentive compensation for teachers, national standards. So we're delighted to see this administration moving forward.